Thank you, Lord Mayor. As part of my declaration of interest form, my wife works for the Museum Trust. I'm a council-appointed director of BMT on various LJ boards, a director of the Edmonton bid, and I've notified the city solicitor of this in advance and been granted a dispensation. I'd like to thank officers and commissioners for their support reviewing and producing our proposals, for their efforts, also on the council's substantive budget. I'd also like to thank staff across the council who've been going about doing their jobs professionally and with dedication while they were so badly let down by the Labour administration who failed to do theirs. Lord Mayor, I rise to move the Conservative Group amendment. Our amendment sets out in two parts. The first part shows how even in this financial mess Birmingham Labour have plunged the city into, it is possible to save valuable frontline services like our local libraries. The second shows how different this year's budget could have been and how different next year's budget must be by setting out a path showing how to try and clear the deficit, keep council tax lower and to save vital services. In the Commissioner's comments to the alternative budgets, they say, of the savings proposals, all are worthy of consideration. All of worthy of serious consideration. Of course, as the Labour group are fond of saying, we bring forwards like this forward every year, and every year Labour reject them, and that's why we have ended up here. Lord Mayor, this is an important budget. It's a budget that shows just how badly Birmingham Labour have made a mess of the council's finances, and I haven't got a real plan to fix that mess. Instead, all Birmingham Labour have to offer is a double whammy of higher taxes and fewer services. Perhaps residents watching this budget debate for the last 20 minutes will have concluded that the leader and his cabinet live in a fantasy land. Because of all the failures since Birmingham Labour took control of the council 12 years ago, every time people look at their council tax bill, it's gone up. Every year they take their kids to the local pool, the fees have gone up. The car park charges have gone up. Even the gross expenditure of the council has gone up. And yet, despite all these tax and fee rises, Labour has still effectively bankrupted the council. Now, to make matters worse, after over a decade of Labour rule in Birmingham, residents face a future where every time they go to the library, they'll find it closed. Every time they visit a youth centre, it will be shut. They'll see parks no longer maintained, streets no longer cleaned, dumped waste not enforced, broken streetlights not repaired. When it rains, we'll all be reminded how Labour slashed the flood defence budget. A golden decade promised by Labour, destroyed by a decade of Birmingham Labour rule. We've long said we support more funding for councils, but Birmingham Labour like to claim £1 billion has been taken away from the City Council. Sometimes they say that includes inflation and service pressures. Sometimes they say that's on top of service pressures and inflation. They hope that people will believe them when they claim it's the fault of others. So what did the leader of the council say in the 2022 budget meeting? Our books are arguably in the healthiest position they've been in for 30 years. Well, then Cabinet member and now leader of the council, Councillor John Cotton, said, we've come through these challenges with our finances in the best state for 3 decades. 2 years ago, a former leader and the current leader described the council's finances as the best in 30 years. Now they would have residents believe that the issues facing Birmingham are due to others at a time the council's budget has increased gross expenditure by £350 million. This year alone, page 388 of the papers, after they'd cut £150 million from the budget. The reality is, for all of the rhetoric that we will hear from the Labour administration today, and we've heard previously about the bankruptcy of Birmingham, this is the fault of Birmingham Labour and no one else. Look at the Section 114 notices last year. There were 3 key causes of Labour's financial mess: potential equal pay liability, compounded by problems with Oracle, and a lack of progress with meeting savings. The Section 25 report of these papers, page 148, perhaps summarises this decade of Birmingham Labour rule the best when it states, financial mismanagement is deep-rooted within Birmingham City Council. Like it or not, on equal pay, 7 years, the warning signs were there for any member of the administration to see. Back in September 2023, the Birmingham Mail highlighted the history of the equal pay crisis, saying, equal pay disaster warnings ignored in desperate bid to end 2017 bin strike. Going on to say the Labour cabinet was starkly warned of potential equal pay doom as a result. Reports from officers highlighted the risks, adding in stark terms, this was the warning to councillors. If a settlement was reached with the unions that protected Grade 3 roles, there is a low probability that the council could successfully defend these claims for sex discrimination and equal pay. The Birmingham Mail went on to conclude that as of today, an agreed job evaluation shake-up has still not been done, and thousands of equal pay claims are in motion or planned. The scenario set out in those reports has come to pass. From 2018, regular reports to the Audit Committee flagged the risk of equal pay to the council. Although not made public until April 26, 2022, in 2018, the Council and the recognised trade unions agreed to review the 7-grade pay structure as it was viewed as being an inequitable structure. 6 years later, that review still hasn't finished. In December 2018, our group called in the Cabinet report on equal pay over concerns about its contents, but sadly Labour councillors on scrutiny voted to ignore our warnings. On the 15th of March 2019, we again highlighted our concerns when the Labour Council made another settlement with the unions. The Birmingham Mail quoted some of what I said at that meeting. I warned, if in the near future there is a for sale sign up on the historic council house because they've been forced to further asset strip the city to pay for their capitulation, if council tax continues to rise above inflation, or if community libraries, leisure centres and other local services are closed to balance the books, then the public will know just who to blame. And blame Birmingham Labour they will. While an audit report in 2019 warned Labour they had to develop a contingency plan to manage the risk of equal pay, they didn't do it. The Cabinet report on the 15th of December 2020 highlights that the Labour Cabinet were told that equal pay remained a significant challenge and warned that task and finish arrangements during COVID could present a new risk. On the 11th of November 2021, GMB announced they had advised their members not to sign agreements with the Council due to new evidence on equal pay. In April 2022, some Birmingham Labour Cabinet members publicly announced their support for the GMB equal pay claim against their own council that they were Cabinet members in. On the 18th of July 2022, the Birmingham Mail reported 2 unions were demanding the Labour Council leaders stepped in to resolve the equal pay crisis. The paper also reported that over 200 union members banged on the main doors of the council house demanding equal pay. Warning after warning, year after year, every year since 2017, there have been warnings that the council had to resolve equal pay issues, and every single year since 2017, Birmingham Labour have ignored those warnings. They even failed to act after tweeting support for resolving equal pay issues at the council. When Labour councillor after Labour councillor stands up and tries to blame others for this mess, ask yourselves, what kind of group tweets support for tackling equal pay to win votes in 2022 and then claims they never knew there was an issue in 2023? That, of course, brings us to last year. First, some of the Cabinet, including the current leader and Cabinet member for Finance, were emailed about a potential equal pay liability of up to 800 million on the 3rd of February, but did not inform the budget meeting of this material risk to the Council on the 28th of February. Instead, the new Labour told the Council meeting, this Labour Council is an exemplar in the transformation of financial management. Said with a straight face, full in the knowledge that HMS BCC's budget had been holed beneath the waterline by the friendly fire of Labour's own actions from the previous 6 years. Despite being warned by external auditors in March, who told the Council had to urgently address the issue and agree a job evaluation scheme by no later than June, the Council called and then cancelled meeting after meeting last summer. Finally, after missed deadline, and 2 Section 114 notices and a Section 5 notice, and warnings from the auditors, on the 12th of October, the Labour group finally agreed a process to carry out a new job evaluation, an amended version of October 2 that they were previously told could not work if not agreed by the 11th of September, a month earlier. 6 years after first being told they needed to act, Birmingham Labour finally agreed to act by the 1st of April 2025. Months after months, years after years of time wasted and potential liabilities increased as Birmingham Labour failed to act. Labour's equal pay crisis, a potential 760 million liability in 2023, has now grown by another 107 million to a total potential liability of 867 million. That's on page 181 of the budget book. That means that since Labour finally claimed clean with the people of Birmingham about their equal pay crisis, the failure of Labour to act has increased the equal pay bill by £306 a minute. £306 a minute, the price to Brummies of Labour's failure to act. Because of the failure of at least some of the Cabinet, including the current leader, to mention to last year's budget meeting of that potential equal pay liability that they knew about but didn't disclose, we asked at a recent Cabinet meeting, not once but twice, for assurances from each Cabinet member individually that they weren't aware of anything else that was being kept from other members. We didn't get a straight answer. We asked in written questions and we haven't had a straight answer. So perhaps when the Cabinet rise to speak today, they will begin by confirming verbally they are not aware of any financial issue That is not being told to the Chamber and the people of Birmingham that would affect this budget. The second major course of Labour's effective bankruptcy of the council is the botched rollout of a new ERP system. 3 years late, 5 times over budget, still not working, set to cost taxpayers at least £130 million to put right. The issues with the Oracle rollout are covered in Section 25 report in the budget papers, but like on equal pay, it's a sorry tale of a Labour cabinet refusing to listen to the warnings of others. It meant that the council is facing an income shortfall and inability to invoice properly, created huge issues for schools, and has exposed the council to the risk of fraud. Yet when challenged about concerns with the rollout over the last 3 years, Labour said that implementation had been subject to intense cabinet member oversight, yet they've seen project management failures at every turn. If that is what intense oversight by Labour produces, no wonder Labour have failed to deliver on 8 out of 10 savings in recent years. Ultimately, when looking back at how Labour effectively bankrupted Birmingham City Council, one need look no further than the National Labour Party Campaign Board report, which said budget cuts and the size of the city are used as reasons to explain the situation. However, this does not hold up to scrutiny. Now, having brought Birmingham to this position, the Labour Council has decided to axe frontline services rather than reshape the council for the 21st century. This is not where we would have taken the council. Having wrecked HMS BCC, Labour now expect others to sail on as if nothing happened. We are clear that if we were in charge, we would not be doing what Labour are doing. We would have been doing what we set out in our future years section of our amendment, and so therefore reject what Labour's plan is. We would have changed much more of this year had Labour been able to provide any accurate financial information. Due to their failures and indecision, they couldn't. Turning to our budget amendment, it sets out how we can protect a range of frontline services, including ensuring that every library is kept open. Libraries form vital community hubs in the heart of communities, much more than just places for people to loan books. They provide places for schools to visit, as just one of the letters we've received from school children in the city, asking for libraries to be saved, warm spaces, places for people to get support, accessing services, and much more. Our amendment has more funding for waste prevention work, cleaner streets, and of course we would axe Labour's proposed rat tax charge on residents needing rat baiting in the city. We've shown it's possible to protect the flood protection budget. We've also shown how the council can keep more streetlights on to ensure residents are safe and retain 25% of the cultural budget in this city, as well as keeping a local engineers function. We've put forward a range of new savings, including back office savings to cabinet support, communications, EDI, temporarily reducing the number of scrutiny committees for 2 years while the council's new governance structure is decided, and a reorganisation of the corporate leadership team. Our amendment also highlights a range of future year savings we feel the administration should be looking at in the coming years, which we're calling on the administration to start work on immediately. And along with that, we've also said what our priorities for those savings would be. Sadly, a failure by the administration to take the budget process seriously has meant that vital work hasn't happened yet, but it must happen this year. The areas we suggest for focus are commissioning and procurement, energy and heat, both using less and generating more, agile workforce, shared services, and reducing the use of consultancy and agency staff. While we'd also use this significant funding for the following priorities. Reducing the deficit. Labour's budget has a £67 million deficit in year 2. That's on page 133. This would help reduce the debt repayments and assets required to be sold to otherwise balance the administration's budget. Retain some of the adult social care centres, keep refuse collections weekly, invest more in transport, and protect Brummies from Labour's bankruptcy tax by keeping council tax lower. As the commissioners have commented about these savings proposals, all are worthy of serious consideration, and consider them this administration must. We've been telling Labour that for a decade, now the commissioners are telling them, and this Labour group needs to start telling their leaders the same. As members and the press consider what weight to give to comments from the Labour group during this debate, it's worth remembering what they said in last year's budget debate. Cabinet Member for Finance said the administration was away from crisis. Councillor John Cotton said we've been working hard to set a balanced 4-year plan. That's not being honest with the people of Birmingham. It's not honest about the causes of this financial crisis, and it's not honest about their lack of plan to fix it. There was little mention of the deficit in his speech from the leader. Last year, the leader boasted it was the first Labour budget to balance. This year, it's got a massive £67 million black hole in it. There was no mention that Labour's choosing to close 24 libraries across the city this year, page 305. No mention that since 2012, when Labour were elected on a promise to freeze council tax would have rocketed by 77% next year, an increase of £855 on a house on average. Labour's 21% hike of council tax over next year, Labour's bankruptcy tax on the people of Birmingham. In a written question, A5 last month, the leader, when asked about his failure to tell the Chamber about a large and accounted for potentially equal pay liability, said, "The Cabinet have a duty to use all the relevant considerations when formulating budget proposals." What a shame it was the leader didn't use his speech to explain how his refusal to tell the whole Chamber of this liability last year was meeting that duty that he admits he and his Cabinet had. So there you have it, Lord Mayor. What happened to the golden decade Labour promised? What happened to the best council finances in 30 years? In 2022, Birmingham Labour's manifesto said under Labour, Birmingham is a city on the up. This is our golden decade of opportunity. Now we know what they really meant was under Labour, Birmingham is a city with council tax on the up, that this would be their bankrupt decade of failure. Labour's double whammy of higher taxes for fewer services. Labour hopes residents will believe them when they claim it wasn't their fault. But almost everything they've told about the council has turned out to be wrong. Why would anyone believe them now? They told us it would be a golden decade, then bankrupted the council. They told us they'd made the finances the best they'd been in Birmingham for 30 years. Now we know Birmingham's finances are the worst they've ever been in a 186-year history of this city. Birmingham Labour's making the biggest ever cuts to services to pay for Labour's biggest ever council failure. The auditors, the unions, even the National Labour Party have all made it clear this is Labour's fault and they need to act. Labour's control of HMS BCC is coming to an end. Rather than presenting a golden decade, they are limping back to port, having rusted and holed the ship through Labour's failure to get a grip of equal pay. Smashed on the rocks of their own botched IT rollout. Unable to go overboard due to their decade of financial mismanagement that have anchored to the ship. Labour are going down and they're determined to try and take Brummies with them. It could have been so different, Lord Mayor, but instead of listening to everyone else over the last decade, they thought they knew best. They ignored 6 years of warnings over equal pay. They ignored warnings about the Oracle rollout before and after it launched. They told the public they were award-winning financial experts while secretly embedding financial mismanagement under their leadership. For Brummies, the council is running out of time to fix its finances before all services loved by our city are lost. But even at this late stage, there is a choice. Back our amendment to save vital services, like all our libraries, like for cleaner streets, like to make our streets safer, and in the long term, follow our proposals to balance the books, deliver better services for adults and young people, keep bin collections weekly and taxes lower, or back Labour's idea to axe the remaining services on the hold and wrecked HMS BCC they've created and keep the whole ship afloat via bankruptcy tax rises of 21% on council tax and a rat tax to get rid of pests, with no plan of how to transform the council and put residents first. After a decade of ignoring everyone else, if they won't make the tough choices now to change how the councils work, to modernise the back office, drive down costs so they can protect frontline services, then it's time for them to get out of the way and make way for those who can.
Thank you, Councillor Alden.